Some of you are new and you're not, running particularly successful schools yet. But if somebody's been with us a year or 2 or 3 years, they're automatically going to be in the top 1% of the industry. It's not like it's difficult to be so much better than all of your competition that even if somebody talks to them, visits their website, visits their school, takes an introductory lesson, it shouldn't be, a much of a contest to begin with. When I was at peak numbers of schools in the Denver metro area, all of my advertising was feeding my quote unquote competitors. It was helping everybody else in the area. I always felt that was a good thing, not a bad thing, because we were building the martial arts idea of training in our area. We're not in a zero sum game. What you mean by that is, you don't have an area where there's 500 people total who are ever going to train in martial arts, and you're going to get whatever your market share percentage of those are. It's not the way this works. The way this works is, of the whatever it is, 30,000 students that we had in Mile High Karate over the years, vast majority of them wouldn't have done martial arts if I hadn't got to them at their elementary school, at a live event, at some other event. We were certainly not waiting for them to open the yellow pages and to tune in with us. But anyway, Master Smith, I wanted to go back to conversations that Zach and Derek and so forth made in introducing themselves. Let's walk through what a very financially successful school actually looks like. And so, Master Smith last year, one example might be Scott and Brandy Sullivan. Scott was a kickboxing champion, but their curriculum is predominantly kids and families, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Bam Bam Martial Arts is an MMA school, but their predominant curriculum is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu with a little bit of Muay Thai thrown in. And last year, if I remember the numbers correctly, they did something on the order of 1.3 million gross, with 830,000 net, with about 340 active students in about, is it 24 or 2,800 square feet, Master Smith?
24.
2,400 square feet. So if you think about that, and all of our $1 million schools are running something on the order of 300 students plus or minus, 400 a month average revenue or plus. And so if you have 300 active students, 400 a month average revenue per student, that's 120,000 a month school. If you had 300 students and 500 average revenue per student, that's $150,000 a month school. And the basic structure of that thing is we do a pretty significant initial tuition to enroll. And there's 3 or 4 reasons for that. But one reason, my primary reason for pushing people to do it is, I'll say 2 reasons. One is it makes a more solid enrollment. In other words, the psychology of the student. And number 2 is if you can break even day one on whatever marketing cost it took to get the student, it makes it much easier to keep focusing on that and keep doing that. So if it costs you $400 to get a new student in social media advertising, and you get 800 the day they enroll, you're way further ahead. And if it costs you $600 for them to enroll and they paid $800, you're still ahead. So one, a pretty significant initial tuition when they enroll. Number 2, a significant monthly tuition. I think maybe our highest among the top tier of the schools is now $425 or $447 a month for a trial enrollment. In other words, for a new student. But the bulk of the schools that are doing well are at around $397 a month. So, we're doing 500 plus the first month, so that's $897, or 400 plus the first month, that's $797 for the enrollment. Then we're doing $397 a month for the initial tuition on a 12-month enrollment. The next step is we really work hard to make sure they get started well on the enrollment, and then we do a renewal. And the renewal is going to have a effect of doubling their level of tuition, or at the very least having a 50% bump. So we can go from $397 a month to $797 or $897 a month. And see, that accomplishes what you were talking about, Derek, is getting that average revenue per student up. Now, as far as active count, I would say there is a magic number when you're a small school, is the magic number of really having some critical mass is about 100 students. Once you pass 100 students, you now have enough activity that you, one, have a lot of connections and with different organizations and people in the area because you've gotten enough students that if you really get to know them and have a good relationship, you can, network with a lot of different organizations. Number two, all the kind of buddy things that we talk about really aren't worth a crap if you have 20 students, but are great if you have 150 or 200 students. And they really kind of start kicking in at 100. So if you hear us talking about buddy days and buddy events and summer camps and any of that stuff, and you're at 80 students or 50 students or below, yeah, you shouldn't worry about any of that stuff yet. On the other hand, if you're at 150 or 200 students or 250 or 300 students, all that stuff can be a phenomenal opportunity. So 100, Derek, is really kind of that critical mass where you now have momentum. And my mission when I was opening, my school to begin with, or opening new schools, was always 100 in the first month, 200 in the first 90 days. In other words, I wanted to have 100 students month one, 200 students by month three. And that was going to give me positive cash flow right off the bat. Even at 100 students with our current pricing model, you're going to be in the high 30s to mid 40s as far as revenue, at least. And in most cases, that gives you a pretty decent cash flow, gives you the ability to start building some staff, gives you the ability to, pay the rent, the utilities, and have a decent salary for yourself. So the target here is, and to give you some benchmarks, to get that average revenue per student over 400 a month, preferably closer to 500 a month. Number one, two is to have a decent initial tuition when they enroll. Our presentation typically is normally 800 to enroll. We give you a $400 discount if you go ahead and finalize today, because therefore it's 400 in the first month, or we give you a $300 discount, so it's 500 in the first month. And then you want to have a decent tuition level for that initial enrollment. The next thing is dropout rate. And I see this over and over and over again is, Riley, you're on the meeting. I think, Riley, we just determined last time, other than maybe Sherry and Guan, although their numbers were a little suspect there, Sherry. But either Sherry and Guan or you or...
Why do you say that, sir?
Well, you got started in the program and flushed out about 40 people and then went to zero dropout rate. So I'm not sure how you average that out.
Oh, well, I mean, it's from this, I calculated from the start of us joining, sir.
Okay. But
she's calculating current, not past. She didn't go back and average the whole year. It was just last month. Which is your current dropout rate?
I was calculating the whole last year, starting from exactly last May.
Okay, without getting into that debate, is we had at least 3 schools at our last meeting that were below 1% a month dropout rate. And again, run that in your head. If you have 100 students, that means you're losing either 0 or 1 student. If you had 200 students, that means you're losing 1 or 2 students. If you have 300 students, that means you're losing 2 or 3 students. And see, what happens is most schools, especially, by the way, MMA, Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, they tend to be worse overall, just structurally because the system's in place. But what tends to happen is, most schools in the country are running between 7 and 10% a month dropout rate. So if I start the year at 200 students, and then over the year I enroll 200 students, say, what would that be? 17 a month. At the end of the year, I'm at 200 students. Well, see, that's being a hamster on a wheel. You're just running, feeding the beast. On the other hand, If I started at 200 students and every month lost maybe a student and then enrolled 200 students, at the end of the year, I'm at 375 or 400 students. It's a completely different world. So you've got to focus on the tuition per student, getting to critical mass, and then really maintaining a super low dropout rate so you don't become a hamster on the wheel. Now, if you're at a small number of students, let's say again below 100, and you want to jump that up quickly, it's simple. It really is simple. Now, I'm not saying it's easy. It's a lot of hard work, but it really is simple. It's the Parthenon. What we always want every month is a minimum of 20 marketing activities going on. Again, Riley, you were a great example of that at the meeting. You proved that you had more things going on than just about anybody else in the room. And those marketing activities tend to fall in several categories. You have online marketing. Online marketing tends to be search, which is dominated by Google, and tends to be social media advertising, which is mostly dominated by Facebook, Instagram, and AKA Meta. The second level is internal referrals. But as I said a minute ago, if I'm a small school, kind of the last thing I'm going to focus on is buddy days and all of that kind of stuff. What I'm going to focus on is I'm going to focus on this next category, which is working with local organizations, elementary schools, big employers, churches, community centers, and so forth, and getting in front of as many people as possible at every live event in the area. The live events in the area, which we were talking about a minute ago, are things like farmers markets, any kind of, there's art shows, there's music in the park, movies in the park, family days at whatever it might be. But if you look around at your local parks, at the local shopping centers, you'll find all kinds of stuff. Oftentimes they're tied to Memorial Day, July 4th, Canada Day, some big holiday. Other times it's the local shopping center has a farmer's market every Friday, and 1,000 people show up every Friday for the farmer's market. And every Friday morning from 9 to noon, you can make 20 appointments. And by the time you aggregate that out, it's done a really nice job for you. So the summer opportunities are movie theater marketing. For the kids market, we have the next Toy Story movie coming up. There's also Moana. I'm not sure how that'll do. And Spider-Man will be the biggie. So there's those movies coming up. But there's also just all kinds of live events and so forth that you can get a booth at. So, Matt Smith, you like to say it's online, internal, and external. I always break that down a little bit more because online is social media and then search marketing. And then internal tends to be an event where one person brings 20 friends, pizza party, birthday party, or where a third of your students bring one friend, buddy days and lightsaber wars and stuff like that. And then we have external community outreach. But where you're going to get the biggest bang to the buck and the biggest momentum when you're still small looking to grow is going to be live events where you can get a booth out and do it effectively. Or it's going to be being in front of daycares and other things that are in churches, community rec centers, public and private schools, public and private daycares and so forth,
Summer
and
camps.
getting in front of a bunch of kids, summer camps, that's all those different summer camp activities. That's where you're going to get the biggest bang for the buck. And the mission for the summer here is to generate at least 100 leads. A lead is defined as they raise their hand that they have at least a little bit of interest, and they gave you a name, a mailing